Hey, it's Debra Poneman, founder of Yes to Success seminars, where we share knowledge and tools for you to create your ultimate life. Ageless, anti-aging for your brain, your body, and your future, and the awake method well, because it's time for all of us to wake up. Have you ever heard of the term sacred activism? It was coined by British author and religious scholar Andrew Harvey. And the definition of sacred activism is the coming together of spirituality and activism. It's activism that comes from the heart, activism that is compassionate, kind, positive. It can be fierce, but it's not about being against something, it's about being for something. It's embodied by this quote that most of us have already heard from Mother Teresa, who, when asked why she wouldn't attend an anti war rally, she said, "When you have a pro peace rally, I'll be there." So, sacred activism is a way to channel our desire to make a difference in the world in a way that's kind and creates solutions and doesn't add to the problem. But where do we start when we feel like nothing makes sense in our world anymore, but we don't have a clue what we can do to contribute to turning it around? So, sacred activism is having a passion for justice, but not just talking to our friends about how bad things are, but taking action, doing something, or as they say, putting your money where your mouth is. When we do that, we not only help the cause, but we experience a rebirth in our own souls. When we feel like we really made a difference in the world instead of just talking about making a difference, well, when we put our heads down on our pillows for our final breath, we'll have peace knowing that we lived a life worth living. And many people are waking up to the fact that injustice and racism and religious and cultural or lifestyle intolerance, climate change, inhumane immigration policies, blatant lies to undermine democracy are not just going to go away if we complain to our friends enough or shout at the TV loud enough. What gives me hope right now is that so many people are waking up and they're saying, hey, what can I do to make a difference? So many people are committed to doing what is in the greatest good for the most people and not just for the privileged few. And there is strength in numbers. We're all in this ship together. And if it goes down, we're all going down, no matter what our political beliefs are. But if we do our part and we lift it up, we will all be lifted up. Remember the words of cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So, would you like to be a part of that small group making a difference? If your answer is yes, what I recommend is to simply do something every day. Stop being depressed and scared about what's going on and say to yourself, snap out of it. Wake up. The world needs you. The world needs your contribution. Do something every day. You have to start somewhere other than cringing at the news and feeling helpless and talking to your friends about how helpless you feel. The great teacher Byron Katie said there is no access to transformation inside that kind of conversation. How about finding a way to use your God given talents to uplift others, to bring joy to those who are lacking joy in their lives? Do you love children? Volunteer at an after school program where you can help kids with their homework. There are kids whose parents have to work two, three jobs just to put food on the table, and they go to these after school programs, and there aren't enough volunteers so that everybody gets attention. And these parents would love to help their kids with their homework, but they need to work to put food on the table. And these kids need you. I'll share a story. Uh, Not so that you think I'm some kind of Mother Teresa, but years ago, when my kids were young, we had a young man living with us, and my kids and I were helping him study for his Constitution test because he needed to pass it to pass eighth grade. So he was like 14 years old, and as we were quizzing him, he starts to tear up. And I apologized and asked him if we were pushing him too hard. And he, his voice was shaking. He said, "No, I'm just so happy." And then we said, "What are you happy about?" He said, "This is the first time anyone has ever helped me with my homework." 14. First time anyone had ever helped him with his homework. You know how many kids there are out there like him? More than you can even imagine. Or are you a visual artist? Find a way to help kids who are survivors of abuse express their emotions through art. Do you feel the agony when you hear about a young man of color being incarcerated for years for being falsely accused of stealing a backpack? Become big brother or big sister and form a relationship with one of these kids and be their advocate when there's no one else to advocate for them, so that tragedies like what happened to Caleb Broaders, who was held in Rikers for 3 years, 800 days of which in solitary confinement for allegedly stealing a backpack with no trial and no previous criminal record. What happened was that when they finally let him out, he hung himself. Become an advocate so that something like that never happens again. Look him up. If he had someone to advocate for him, he'd be alive today. Or do something on a lighter note. Take kids to an amusement park or a zoo or the planetarium that their parents don't have the means or the time to do that, or teach them yoga or breath work. Whatever is your passion, use it for good. Do you care about the planet? You can also engage in sacred activism by just stopping excessive consumption, making a smaller footprint, ride a bike. For 1 year back in 2015, every time I had the impulse to purchase something I really didn't need, like yet another cute shirt or a $5 cup of fancy coffee, I stopped, asked myself if I really needed it. And instead, I took the money and I put it in a fund. And at the end of the year, I donated over $2,000 to charity. And I didn't miss even one of those things that I didn't buy. Are you feeling the pain of the conflict in Israel and Gaza? I'm part of a prayer intentioning chanting group that means every night to pray for peace. I'll put the link to it in the down below in what's it called, the chat, the comments, whatever. There are many nonprofits that are nonpartisan that are doing great work, like Doctors Without Borders, and CNN has a fund where they carefully vet organizations that help victims on both sides of that conflict. And as you've heard me say before, and I'll say it again, when you take action, you not only help the people, you also feel so good about yourself. This isn't why you do good deeds, but there's nothing that will pull you out of depression and hopelessness that so many are feeling right now than contribution. In the Torah, which contains the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, it is said that the most powerful prayers are those we pray for others. And when you contribute, it's been scientifically proven that it increases your oxytocin, the feel good hormone. So you volunteer, you do a random act of kindness, you join a prayer circle, you bring hot meals to people living in tents in the middle of winter in your city, or even donate to a charity online. It makes you happier. It increases your self love. In fact, there was a study done at the National Institutes of Health that showed that not only did doing charitable acts or random acts of kindness increase people's oxytocin, feel good hormone, but it decreased people's cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And lowering your cortisol also has been scientifically linked to not only reducing symptoms of stress and depression, but better sleep, decreased heart disease, so much more. And when you feel good about yourself, that joy radiates. We're vibrational beings. You know the expression, attitudes are contagious. Make sure yours is worth catching. Yeah, this joy makes your attitude worth catching, and you inspire others, and then they in turn inspire others, and they in turn inspire others, and the ripple effect is unending. And I know some of you are wanting to do something really big, like maybe go down in history like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Susan B. Anthony. I love Susan B. Anthony. She's my fave. Do you know the whole story about her? She was actually born in around 1820 into a family of Quakers And she left the Quaker Church because of its restrictive lifestyle, especially towards women. And then, when she was only 17, she started collecting anti slavery petitions. And then, at the age of 28, she started to organize around equal pay for equal work for women. And we're talking about 1848. She's organizing for equal pay for equal women, work for women. And from there, she devoted her entire life to sacred activism. In around the 1870s, she was arrested for voting and she was convicted of voting at trial, and she refused to pay the fine. Nonviolently, she stayed in jail. And then in the later in the 1870s, a senator from California presented an amendment to give women the right to vote, known as the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, but it was not ratified for another 42 years in 1920. 14 years after her death, by the way, it became the 19th Amendment. I mean, 1920. My parents were already alive in 1920. Anyway, I know you'd like to do something really impactful and be a Rosa Parks or a Malala, but not everybody was born to go down in the history books, but it doesn't matter. In the Talmud, which is the central text of Judaism, it says, whoever destroys a single life is considered to have destroyed the whole world, and whoever saves a single life is considered to have saved the whole world. So start with a single life. Help one person be happier, be healthier. But one thing you can't do if you want to go down in history is to sit and watch soap operas all day and drink Diet Coke or play it safe. My favorite Susan B. Anthony quote goes like this: cautious, careful people, always casting about to preserve their reputation and social standing, can never bring about reform. Those who are really in earnest must be willing to be anything or nothing in the world's estimation, and publicly and privately, in season and out, avow their sympathy with despised and persecuted ideas and their advocates and bear the consequences. And next week, we're going to talk more about that, or I'm going to talk more about that. So, sacred activism, activism that comes from the heart, activism that is compassionate, kind, and positive, activism that's not being against something, but being for something. But it's activism, it's not complainism. So, what are you going to do today that's going to uplift the vibration in the world and spread joy to counteract the fear and the negativity? Just doing random acts of kindness or even giving a sincere compliment can actually be sacred activism. So let us know in the chat what you're going to do today. Let's give each other ideas. All right. So thank you in advance for doing something this week, every day, that's going to uplift our world, and have fun with it. Bye for now.